There are 1,000,000 ways to die. We just wanna talk about it. Codeheads.
Hello, all code headers. Welcome back. Here we are, and we have a guest with us.
Ooh, yes.
So we have an amazing human being, but also a certified intuitive life coach, Alyssa Latizori. And we're so excited to have her with us today.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the program.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Our honorary code head.
I love it.
And today we are doing a bit of a follow-up from our near-death experience episode that we already shared with you guys. But we're going on a journey a little bit beyond that. So we're delving into some of the topics that we discussed with near-death experience, but just jamming in and going further. And Alyssa has some personal experience. She's got some professional experience, and Mike and I are just drinking it up and kind of obsessed. And I do have to say that while we were the Codehead song was playing, my favorite hummingbird just came to my little window, and I always think it's my dad. So
Aw,
See, there you go.
he's he's flittering around just to.
that's nice.
Well, I think that's like what we'll get into at some point too, is that like I think we dismiss those things so often because we call it like woo woo and we feel silly, but like stuff like that does not happen by chance. Like I just got chills. Like that specifically happened right now. And I think we just dismiss it because society tells us it's silly. But I think if anyone actually takes the chance to properly think about it, like there was that one time or, like something out there in the universe they maybe turned it off, but there's a definite way to connect, I think, to people on the other side.
100%. And I
Mhm.
think that's why, we wanted to bring you in because I know that, you have a lot of experiences. And, one of the things we talked about last week with the near-death experiences is that people who have had them tend to come back and say that they are these like mystical like states of consciousness, and they, are similar to when people are able to take these psychedelic substances. But it's, really a Zen-like experience for people that is something they almost can't describe during these near-death experiences. Um, and there's all sorts of different, triggers that can happen that, make people remember things in life. But these, really truly unexplainable, and that's why I keep calling it mystical, like, all these things that happen, when science can't explain it, people tend to brush it off.
Mhm.
And you know, you have to think that there's a lot of things with science we can't explain. So there are some things we just have to, believe and trust and put our heart into.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Alyssa, if you want to share some of your experiences with where you have been or what you're doing, and
Yeah. Well, I feel like the conversation can go a thousand different ways. I have not had a near death experience. I'll start with that. And I'm not an expert in any of these things. I'm just sharing my own personal experience. But Bridget, you and I have talked many times before about how we both lost our dads.
Yes.
I lost my dad about 12 years ago. Um, he was older, so it was one of those things I wasn't a surprise. And I have connected to him many different ways since he's passed, but more so than rainbows is one of our things, like I guess hummingbird is to you. But like I have had very specific dreams. I've had things like where I knew that he would show up in a certain way. Even my daughter has had dreams like that have coincided with my dreams. Like she's like, your dad came to visit me in a dream. And like that is just there's no other like it's happened far too many times in my life that there's no way that it's just coincidence. And the
Right.
dreams are so vivid and so real. And it just like gives me chills thinking about it. Like I can't even explain how many times. And another thing we'll talk about too is how I've gone into breath work and experienced a deeper meaning of life and almost like a disconnect of the physical body, which to me is kind of crazy, but it's happened.
But I think that right there that, the between the breath work that you've done and the facilitated, journey is, having that out of body experience is really what people kind of describe with their near
Mhm.
death experiences when they're saying, like, they know that they're not in their body. They just
Mhm.
know that, they're with their loved ones that have passed. They're somewhere else. And, um, I think that's something that even the biggest skeptic that's like, "Oh, that's malarkey and tomfoolery," I think it's something they really maybe even wanna experience because
Mhm.
everyone has someone from their life
For
that
sure.
they've connected with, that they've loved so much that is no longer on the physical earth with us, that
Mhm.
they would just give, like, anything to spend, like, 5 minutes with them, you
Mhm.
know?
Well, there is fear and unwillingness often on the part of, associated with skepticism.
Uh-huh.
And I think if you have to make yourself available in some capacity in order to receive that. So if you
Mhm.
absolutely shun it, and I could definitely consider myself a skeptic depending on the topic, but if you shun it, there is no possibility then for you to have that exposure that we're
Yeah.
discussing.
Well, and I think of myself as like a channel or a vessel. And a lot of times they say too that, when we're little, we are more susceptible or open because we haven't had the world condition us to say that these things are silly. So, like, for instance, when I was little, I used to see a shadow or a spirit in our house. And I don't know, I was probably 5 or 6. But I was not, it was actually scary. And thankfully, my mom didn't brush it off as, I think, because she was open to those things as well. But it was very scary because I didn't understand it. But I think what you're saying is like, after a while, society conditions us to have these thoughts
Right.
and beliefs that these are silly or, we're crazy or whatever. So we kind of shut that channel off. But when we're open to receiving, the messages do come forward very easily. Like for someone like me, when my dad passed, I actually kind of knew he was something had happened the night before. I had this really crazy dream. I'm a dreamer. Like I have very vivid dreams. I've always been that way. But it was very chaotic, very intense. And I felt like something was happening the night before I actually found out he had passed. And then when I got the call the next day that he wasn't doing well, I literally dropped to my knees and I was like, I knew it because of this dream I had. I just like knew. And then when he passed, like the next couple of days, I had already been able to kind of connect through rainbows and signs with my grandmother and my aunt who had passed a couple years prior. So I knew that like I would be capable to like connect with him. So after he passed, I like kept praying and saying, God, please send dad to me. And he came to me in a dream about 3 days after he had passed away. And it was very real. Like he came and touched me and hugged me. And long story short, I don't know. I was very fixated at the time that I really wanted to meet my soulmate. This was like this thing I always talked about. I want to meet my soulmate. And ironically, I felt like he was leaving me in the dream. And I was like, Dad, wait. I was like, will you make sure that I fall in love? Now, at the time, I was my early 20s or mid 20s, and I really wanted to find my husband. I just was ready. And he had a phone in the dream, and he showed me a picture of this man with dark hair. And ironically, like a year later, I met a man that looked very similar to the picture that he held in the phone. And I like knew Will was the one too because he's like, I had this dream about your dad. I was like, this is just too weird. So I just think there is just when we are open to that and we ask for it, and also to not get discouraged if you don't get it,
Yeah.
if you can't,
Right.
because that's another thing too, is what I'm learning. And I want to talk more about too, is this book, Journey of Souls, Michael Newton, who is um, he's a psychologist and he does these hypnosis of past life regression work. And the one thing they kind of explain is when people or spirits are trying to connect with us, it takes a lot of energy for their souls to come back in physical
Yeah.
form or energetic. So sometimes just little, symbols of hummingbirds and whatnot are much easier to kind of pass forward to connect with us. So this book is fascinating. So I have this is the second one. It's called Destiny of Souls, but the first one is called Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And he explains a little bit further from what you guys are talking about, too, of what happens to our souls after we actually die. And these people in hypnosis, thousands experience the same thing about what happens as they go into this afterlife, so to speak. And it's just like too many people said exactly the same thing. There's no way it can't be real.
Right.
Now, sometimes two people are like, yeah, whatever. Like, "Ah, whatever." But I don't know. I just experienced it in a way that just doesn't there's no way to me it could not be real.
Well, it's interesting, what you were saying about like when you were little, and just some of the like seeing things and hearing things or whatever. So one of my children, my youngest, is like, I mean, she's about to be 9, and I think we literally within the last few months she finally started sleeping through the night. Like I had not slept through the night in 10 years.
Hmm.
And so that's why I'm always looking at little, crow's feet. But but I was doing everything. I was buying like everything. It was like buy a pod, buy like this, buy a heavy weighted blanket, buy this.
Uh-huh.
I have spent thousands of dollars on buying everything to help this child sleep. I mean, it's like lit up like Vegas in a room, even though it's not supposed to be, but it's like, because she, is scared at
Scared
night.
her. Yeah.
Right. And then finally, it's like, I've done everything. The poor thing's like in a cocoon to like mummified to sleep. And I'm like, this is how you're supposed to sleep with ADHD, and she's like, okay. And then she's like, but and finally it was like, she was like, but I hear breathing. I hear breathing. And I'm like, oh my God, there's like no breathing. It's you.
Go to sleep.
I remember I was like saying this, and this woman I know is, does a lot of channeling and connecting, and she's, a bit of a seer. And she was like, hmm. She's like, we've been hugging. She's like, your daughter's an empath. Your daughter, actually, that's your father, and your grandmother. And I was like, all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? Like this woman does not know me. We worked together, but we had never actually talked at work. Like it was our first time, like really kind of chitty chatting. And I was just like, kvetching about why I was so tired. And and she was like, oh, you know what you need to do? Have her say like, hey, the door's closed to all the spirits while I'm sleeping. I'll give you open door hours, but don't, not right now. I need to close it. I need to get my sleep, and I'll let you know when I'm available. And she's like, just have her say that every night, before she goes to bed, and also include like, no one can touch me. And so I was like, okay, this is going to freak her out. Like the kid is scared of like, a butterfly half the time. So I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, Ella, can you do me a favor and say this? And she's said it at night, and it was the first night she slept through the night.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, so then we did it again. And I was like, and so she's been saying it before bed, but then she, eh, you know, she's been starting to now have dreams that she's remembering with my dad, with my
Oh,
Nana. And so
that's
she's
cool.
not hearing the breathing. And the woman I met was like, no, it was definitely your father, because he wants to get to know them, even though, he passed away before they were even like a thought in my brain, because I was 17. But she's like, and she's like, oh, and you have a picture of you and your dad, or she has a picture of you and your dad on her nightstand. I'm like, oh, yeah, she does, because she wanted to see baby pictures. And so I wasn't a baby, but I was probably her age, and we look a lot alike. And she was like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And she's like, yeah, he comes because he knows that your other daughter is just shut down. She has no interest. She's zero interest in any sort of spirits. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has kind of like within the last few months, just because of that, I'm like, oh my gosh. And she's like, you have the ability. You're just too busy. She's like, so you have it all shut down. She's like, when your kids are older and aren't as busy, she's like, you can open back up. She's like, you're just, you got the, we'll be back sign up, like at a store. We'll be back in 5.
Yeah.
She's like, but that's her. And so it's interesting because I probably had those experiences that I brushed off too.
Mhm. Well, they say that like everyone is capable. It's just whether you're willing or whether you're open to it. And I think that's kind of like the journey that I've been on.
Mm,
I've been very intentional with I don't want to call it a healing journey, but just exploring like truly who I am on a deeper level. Because from a young age, I always was like, this is just my body. Like, who am I? Like, I am an energetic soul within this vessel that like carries me around. So when this thing, like you guys say, medically dies, what am I? And I think that is our soul and that is our spirit that continues on. Like, it's just because all the wires shut down and all the body fails doesn't mean that I don't know. It was very clear to me that like I was more than just a physical body. And I think like getting back to that place of understanding who we are opens you up to be more capable of, but it takes intention. It takes a lot of work. And it's basically like, that's what my process is all about as a life coach, is like basically taking off the layers of conditioning that society has led us to believe, our limiting beliefs and all of these other things. Like there's so much more underneath all of that. And that's what I like the breath work is the breath work kind of brings you back to a state of just who you really are, but the body kind of like shuts down and lets you think as a channel, basically.
I so some of those blockades and obstructions, like I think
I guess.
our brain, right, can in fact interfere. Like if our brain isn't the ultimate source of consciousness, right, it's a filter that, takes this vast unmediated reality, right, and narrows it into something that we can understand and live inside. And I think over time we get more and more conditioned to relying on that method of observation. But
Yes.
catch is it limits what we can see, right? So it
Mhm.
draws the lines, sets boundaries like time, space, identity, all of that. So it's more about, to me, about survival than about reality itself. So the brain makes sense of the world, but then it traps that understanding inside a frame. So it's kind of like you said, bypassing the brain in essence to get there. And that's very difficult to do, especially both of you with mentioning the children and empath and all of that once you get to a certain age. So I think it's harder to open up,
For sure.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
and I was gonna say, like, I think that's why it's really cool, like, when you are intentional about doing meditation, hypnosis, all that kind of stuff, is because the conscious brain shuts off and the subconscious, unconscious kind of steps forward because you're allowing it to, because you're kind of getting to this place that feels comfortable and safe. So we all can get it and we can all get there. We just have to put the effort and the time into it. And some people just could not care and have no interest and think it's all stupid and they won't they won't get there, but if they could change their mindset, they could.
They might get there by death because that's the elimination of the brain,
That's true. That's the only thing you can't control, right?
and
right?
then they'll say,
Then
"Oh,
you have
shoot,
to deal with it.
I was wrong. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm dead now." Yeah.
Well, a quick aside, I saw a medium after my mom dies, and I trust this
Yeah.
medium. I've seen her for several things. But she said, my mom, who was a cynic and a skeptic, asked my mom, and like my mom's like, nope, I get it now. And like she would never have done, and I believed that interpretation. So my mom was shown, once she let go of that rigidity by force, secondary to an aneurysm, she was forced to let go of it. And then now she was in it. And
Wow.
that acceptance was realized. And I think she always might have suspected all of that. But again, she limited it to just stay in the rational frame of mind for survival, so to speak.
And I think that's like kind of what this Michael Newton talks about is the process of when you cross over, so to speak. Like you're letting go, like she was, of all of the human things that you were led to believe. And then at the end of the day, we're all energetic souls. And I think like that's kind of what I was feeling that night before my dad passed, because he was in his early 80s when he passed. So he literally, I feel like he was open to hearing what I said, but he was closed off to thinking about that stuff at all. But I think as an empath myself, that was what I was feeling is he was kind of confused. Like he didn't really talk about religion. He wasn't really open to that stuff. So I think I was sensing kind of what it sounds like your mom was through him, that he was kind of scared. I felt like it felt nervous or like it felt confusing and chaotic as he was making that transition, which I think I was sensing before it even happened. It was kind of interesting.
And, I'm probably going on a bit of a deviation. Welcome to this brain. But there have been times that I've, whether it's in the emergency room or whatever, and worked with these, sometimes patients that are having psychotic breaks, right? Like the schizoaffective or whatever, and they are like, the bipolar that are super manic, and they're like on another plane. But some of the stuff that they say and some of the stuff they share, I'm like, huh. Like, obviously it's not like, rational in the rational world, but I remember them like looking at like one of my colleagues and being like, well, blah, 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 and like saying something that they were like it hit home. Like they were saying something about, someone who had passed, they were sharing information that anybody else would be like, oh, they're just, hearing voices in their head. And,
Right.
they were just saying it. But I remember my colleague being like, holy moly, like, they needed a moment, and I was like, "Yeah, just go," and they were like afterwards, they were like, "Dude, that was weird," like, you know, "My aunt died last week, and she used to say that all the time," and they, like, looked at me and said, and so I think, talking about, like, the rational mind versus, you know, Obviously, there's a difference between psychosis and, but, we do a lot of the things that we do are, whether they're trauma responses or just other responses that we've created and put into our head, truly, Mike, for survival, or to make sense of things, real or imagined, I guess. Um, it does really create these like barriers and these blockades. And so I do think that, the ability and the folks that go on, to do these like the psychedelic substances, to go on those journeys to unlock and open, um I think it's really pretty amazing because it
Mhm.
does help us to like, obviously you do have to do work on yourself to like, if you have a lot of like, PTSD trauma, sometimes there's Pandora's box that maybe needs to stay closed. But if you do work on that to, be able to jiggle that lock there, and be able to open yourself up, I do think it's like a really amazing opportunity, for people. And I
Yeah.
think it's, you know, I just think it's something that, obviously not everyone should experience.
Well, I
In
think
the
that's what I was gonna say.
Sure.
I think like maybe it's just because I'm tuned into it more now, but I think like these woo woo words of ayahuasca and
Mm.
you know I don't know, just like manifesting, like have become a little bit more mainstream. So I think people are more getting interested in them, but without really understanding or preparing properly. So I think it gets a little skewed because I feel like I've heard randomly on like Bravo, some of these people talking about doing ayahuasca. And like, I've been doing this now for probably like 2 or 3 years, like very intentional processing and breath work and psychedelics and stuff like that. But I feel like I'm not even ready to go down that
That
road
scares the
because
tar out of me. I
yeah. Well, but
Well,
I think it's just like I think people can do it and they can get something out of it because of course like the drug is working, but I feel like to truly channel it properly, like you have to be prepared, you have to be in the mental headspace and like we had talked about before and we can talk about now is when I've done, microdose sessions and then I feel like that prepped me to kind of go a little bit deeper when I finally did like a full psilocybin like breathwork experience. So I was like ready for that. But it's so much of it is in your mind. So I think you have to start learning how to like let yourself unlock the mind and go rather than letting just the drugs work. You have to like have a mission of what you want to experience, but also be open to receiving too, which is kind of interesting.
for our audience, can you just define microdosing? Because I hear that term, especially over the past few years, a lot, and
Yeah.
I think I
I
understand.
mean,
But
I know
tell,
I don't. I mean, maybe Bridget can help me a little bit more with this because I'm no expert in this, but I think like I'll take supplements with it doesn't really have the psilocybin in it, but like a very, very small dose. So it's like we're still getting the benefits of the mushroom, which comes from the earth. And, it's just like a definitely, they say that I wish I knew more about this stuff, that like mushrooms are such like an intelligent um, creature, so to speak, that like is such a way to like physically connect. It's like, I don't know. I don't really understand it, but by microdosing, it's just taking a very, very small amount. So you're getting the benefits without having like a full psychedelic trip, basically. So you can do it as a supplement, or you could do it as like when I did the breath work, I just took a small amount of like an actual mushroom and you're still experiencing it, but not like a full out of body experience.
okay,
Well,
Just like a minimal exposure, basically.
yeah, and to go off what you were saying about like the mushrooms is because they're very adaptable and they
Mhm.
actually are like, people try and go and they ground, people go and, like, you know, we hug trees at my house and make sure that we're barefoot outside as much as possible and whatnot. But like the mushrooms are actually growing up from the earth. So, there are theories that when you're eating these mushrooms, you actually, you are grounding, like
Yeah.
you
sure.
know,
And like there's a
taking
whole
some
thing, a
of that
ritual of
energy from
like
the earth.
being I don't remember so the girl that I work with when I do these facilitated breathwork sessions, I call her like a shaman, but she's just experienced in working this whole thing.
I
But I
love
remember saying
calling her a
basically,
shaman.
huh?
I love calling her a shaman. That's what we're
We'll call
calling
her a shaman. Um, but she says it's like the DNA in the mushroom is like a almost like a nerve system, almost like our brain, like a body. It's just they're very intelligent. I don't know, fungus.
it. The fungus among us.
So I wish I knew
do
more about
actually.
it, but
I've seen. I know what she's talking about, and I wish actually I read up on it more. But I've seen
in
these
my mind, I like see it,
like
like, the
mapping these
network inside
data.
them.
Yes, and there's there's like activations within the. I know I'm going to sound like an idiot, but I've seen it. You can yeah, we might have to edit this part out. But there there are these like renderings of mushrooms, and there are like almost like our brain when our
Yeah.
synapses are firing and
Uh-huh.
like dendrites. It looks like that within mushrooms
Uh-huh.
when they map it out with the
But I
energy.
always think to myself, it's like if this is a little bit sidetracking, but like if this can be such an incredible tool for people and healing and like why the heck don't we utilize it? Like it's just like I don't get it. It's just so funny how
It's
that yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I know. It's just so wild. But I guess.
organic from the earth. So really, I don't know how you could just dismiss it outright.
Uh-huh. Let's just take other drugs that we facilitate in a lab versus like what the earth gave us.
And here we are wrapping up our chat with Alyssa, which is very exciting. And there's more to come. So you guys will hear more from the three of us next week here on Codeheads.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.
There are 1 million ways to die. We just wanna talk